I must travel. Will you accompany me? Fionna asked Naalin. Where do you go? I grew up in Drustenlach. I miss my papa so much. I have to travel there to see him. Fionna felt anxiety tugging at her heart again. I like the tall one, Naalin said. Would he be coming with us? No, Fionna laughed. He is the commander here. His men need him now. I see. He commands humans. Naalin looked confused and somewhat disturbed by that. I should stay with my kin, but I am so very weary, Fionna. I can wait a few days longer. We both need rest. I can help you communicate better. It would be good for you to learn the common tongue. We all know this language. And just why do I wish to talk to them? Naalin showed outward disdain for humans again. We're surrounded by them, Naalin, Fionna explained. Most of the elves have gone back to Ilmatar, or maybe even all of them. We were searching for more when we found you. Naalin didn't realize the elves had all left. She looked over at Fionna with a frown and was clearly disturbed by this news. What have I been woken into? I'm sorry, Naalin. Fionna put her hand on her shoulder as she spoke. We are now in the 4th age of man. The Great War ended the 3rd age a long time ago. Naalin was stunned for a moment, but quickly shook it off. Fionna thought she must have made up her mind about something that had troubled her. Changing the subject away from humans, Fionna asked, What happened to you on the island? Do you wish to tell me? We could start there. I am hungry, Naalin groaned. Is there a place to find food, yes? Fionna led her to the fort's commissary. She was disappointed to find that the men were back to their old habits of cooking poorly for themselves. Back to work, I guess, Fionna announced as she scraped together what little she could find. Naalin just sat down at the counter and waited. There was a bowl of apples nearby, so she took one and crunched into it. No wonder I've been distracted, Fionna mumbled as she thought of how many supplies she was going to need to reorganize this kitchen. Naalin told Fionna her long story as they ate. I was helping my mother prepare for birthing when they came. The monstrous Heisi and their goblin horde overran the village. A firestorm instantly killed my mother as the roof of our small house caved in. The evil was loosed upon us all. Everyone ran for their lives into the forest. Many were captured to be tortured and turned into more of their filth. After the monsters were gone, I searched for those left hiding among the trees. We were only the smallest of us, left crying for lost families and the very eldest. So few had survived. We made our way east along the edges of the Blue Mountains and eventually found refuge at Eldelórne. Fionna listened as they finished up their meal, and then they walked back to Fiona's private room where Naalin would be staying. I was barely old enough to be trained to fight. Regardless of this fact, I was given a sword and armor along with the others because our new rulers told us an evil was rising in the land. Naalin continued. It was called the Fallen One. Lord Samanos had come into the realm in the disguise of a sorcerer. He was found at the edge of the Rahidin forest in what we thought to be an abandoned ruins. My clan's youngest were hardly strong enough to defend themselves. They were sent against such a foe. It was absolute destruction to lead them there. Her eyes blackened with the memory as it surfaced. That is where our kin fought for our new king. So many were slaughtered on the bloody field of battle. Our new king got what he wanted. The evil was driven out and the forest cleared of their mutant abominations. The atrocities of what we saw in the lower levels under that fortress, Fionna. Elves were twisted and bloody, chained by their necks. once beautiful neighbors of our own, and Elderhis lay torn apart from giving birth to those beasts. Naalin's eyes grew cold with anger as she spoke her memory out loud for the first time in hundreds of years. Their bodies were thrown aside like dead husks. They used them to feed the horde. Faces we once knew. I released so many to the true death with my own blade. Naalin cried out with great sorrow as she looked down at her hand, as if the bloody dagger was still there. Fionna hugged Naalin tightly to herself to calm her tears. They were both crying in each other's arms at the horror that was forever riveted into that long memory. A short while later, Eijlam came into the room and found them huddled together. They were asleep. He could see dry salt trails of tears on their cheeks. He lay down silently in the bed behind Fionna, stretching his arm over them both. "Rest well," he whispered, as he gently kissed Fionna on the edge of her ear. Long memory is just a way of saying oral history that should not be forgotten. But in the elven psyche, because they live so long, this oral history can become very damaging. This is the decay of the mortal realm upon the elven spirit that sends them back to Ilmatar to rest and be reborn. It is also important to the elves not to forget such long memory, so they share it collectively. Because if you forget history, you will be doomed to repeat it. I am your author-narrator, Karleigh, and I'm glad to welcome you to this reading of Tales of Eldelórne, Book 1 of the trilogy. Today we are on Chapter 28, Death of Us. In an attempt to find peace, after what seemed like an unending trauma since their exile from Velavar, Naalin and her kin traveled southwest to the Autumnwood forest. The Seer King had witnessed their struggles. He did not agree with Karis Elderhan's poor judgment in forcing the young into such danger. What was left of Naalin's clan were allowed to enter and find sanctuary there. In King Elendil's court, they found tranquility and stayed for a long while. I do understand their dialect after living there for nearly 300 years, Naalin told Fionna in a smirk as she continued to share her story over their breakfast. The Autumnwood Kingdom is where I first seriously trained in the art of stealth warrior. I then pledged my time to the king's regiment and wore his colors proudly. Those of us who survived the battles to the north gladly served this king of peace. Elendil always put the safety of his subjects first and was fair with his judgments. My elders remained separate for reasons they would not say, until one day they petitioned to leave King Elendil's kingdom to travel even farther south. We thought their actions were to escape the isolation the sovereign imposed on his lands, or because of the call of the sea. We were shipbuilders, you understand. After all, we came from the northern shores. My kin longed to be near the ocean and feel bare feet running on sandy beaches again. Naalin smiled wistfully at the memory of her lost home. I too could feel a yearning for the ocean's edge. It was sad to leave King Elendil's service, though. I had made many friends there. So the clan of the northern shores found themselves all the way to the southern lands of Eldelórne. Oh, Roevash and Eijlam are from there, Fionna interjected. Did you know Ro is my Eijlam's elder brother? Fi asked. How big and strange, Naalin said, meaning they seemed more like opposites than brothers. Long story, Fionna said, but I'm here to listen to yours. So, Fionna directed the conversation. She'd almost derailed back to Naalin's long memory. Naalin was sitting there, racking her brain, trying to recall something. I had visited the place in my past as a youth, and I knew some of the elves as distant kin to my father's side, she told Fionna. Life was good in Eldelórne. Living there was the first true peace I had felt since my mother died. We were invited to adopt homes and stay there as long as we wished, but our elders wanted to settle on the island just out in the bay. So we built a harbor. We bartered a few good ships for fishing and trade. We all cultivated the beautiful gardens out there. We could easily ride those ships across the bay to the island. It was a good time, Naalin said. But here is where the memory takes a turn into the darkness, Fionna. The ship I captained was coming back from the mainland. We had just picked up needed supplies from a neighboring settlement called Belfast. When I returned, I heard some of the Eldelórne folk were leaving. They were traveling west to Otto's Landing. It was the beginning of the Great Migration. Many of the youngest ones of our clan heard the Lord's call as well and wished to go. They deserved the right to speak for themselves after the atrocities we had all suffered. We were the youngest of Velhavar, and were not aware of any strife that our elders had suffered in the past. The old ones had vowed never to obey when Lord Untuoni called, because so many ages before, Ilmatar had allowed them to witness their own kin's deaths by elven hands. It was a bad time in our land when elves killed elves. It was a senseless cruelty, Naalin said sadly. Fionna wasn't sure if she meant the kin-slaying was senseless, which it was, or the elders' decision for the clan to stay behind. She soon understood Naalin's meaning as she continued. The elders then called an assembly to that garden. Everyone was there. And without a buy or leave, our eldars marked us with the dark magic. Our whole clan was forced to sleep, Naalin shuddered. You can't imagine the rage and the fear as voices went up in protest, families trying to find each other before the darkness took us. It happened so fast. That is the last memory until you woke me. She finished telling her story. Fionna could only sit and shake her head at the pain and suffering Naalin was made to witness. She had listened to Ro's war stories many times by the hearth. Fionna was happy to share the burden of his long memory. Somehow she knew that when elvenkin spoke their long memories, the remembrances became less painful in the sharing. For some reason, hearing this story from Naalin was deeply disturbing to Fionna. Naalin felt sorrow for the Eldars, but she was angry that in the end this act of magic's turned them into the very thing they abhorred. Maybe they thought the curse of endless sleep was not the same as simply cutting each of our throats with a blade. There is naught to do about what happened. Naalin shook her head in disgust. If ever I had one wish to ask of our lords, it would be to seek justice for my innocent kin who were slain at the hand of their own Eldars. She spat. They should have known better, she growled. I alone will walk the shores of Ilmatar. Oh, and you, Naalin set aside her anger as she looked at Fionna curiously, knowing she was somehow related. She gave a sad smile of acknowledgement to the last of her clan. Sitting by the hearth in Roevash's quarters, Fionna spoke the memory of Naalin's exodus. It took a lot out of her to share such horrors, Fionna said. Naalin trusted Fionna to relate her story to the guys accurately. as she went to bed early. Fionna was curled up in her usual chair, with Eijlam sitting on the floor in front of her, leaning into her knees. She played with his hair as she spoke. Ro kept his eyes on the flames, feeling the heavy weight of her words. When Fionna was done speaking, there was a long silence. "We should leave more often." EJ broke into the atmosphere that had grown thick. He drank the last drop from his cup and got up to fill it again. "This is good ale. Apple, is it?" Fionna agreed as she took another sip. She did not expect an answer to her comment. Ro was sitting, scowling, caught up in the memories of war. The violence of those times made men and elves do evil to each other and themselves. It is tragic. Roevash sadly said, thinking about the beautiful faces of elves he had to leave behind. Shaking his head, he brought himself back with a growl of disgust. "A dragon has come into the valley," Ro quietly said, changing the subject. "Dakin thinks the beast is being controlled, but by what is still left uncertain." "We fight a dragon, then," Eijlam said, trying to mask his enthusiasm. "No, not just yet," Ro cautioned. "Then what is it you need, Ro?" Fionna asked. "We must first consult a wizard," Ro said, looking at them both. "The wizards we know of are both equal distance from here, and I understand you would like to visit your home, Fionna." Fionna could see where Ro was going with this and smiled. "EJ, we could make a fast trip." "I agree," EJ said. "Do you think Naalin will be okay?" "She's still not good at speaking very well," Fionna said. "It is my duty as commander to see to her welfare. I will watch over her safety," Ro said in his most obligatory attitude. Fionna hadn't seen him act this starched since the day they first met. "Try not to be so bossy." Fionna blinked her big doe eyes at him and giggled. The big man just sat scowling back at her as he swigged down the last ale of the evening. It looks like Fionna and EJ are going to go on another adventure to Drustenloch, the capital city of Anghalie. All excitement aside, it's a very serious time. They are on a mission to ask the wizard Fargal if he's heard any information about why a dragon would show up on the northern shores. Thank you again for joining me, and come back next week to hear the rest of the story. Elvish lesson of the day. Hiro nan gurth Amlug, Dago Amlug. May the dragon find death. Kill the dragon. A dragon is Amlug. A group of dragons, Amlugrim. All of the dragons, Amlugath. You may or may not side with their sentiment as they shout for the death of the dragon. Dragons are destructive creatures in their fire and their ice and their other magics that are darker than you can imagine. Mortals do not hold the long memories, but the wizards know, and so it is with the ancient elves as well. Hiro nan gurth Amlug, Dago Amlug. Kill the dragon. All right then, cue the music.
the pages turned, chapters burned, not a word. One thing I have learned: when we fall, it always hurts. My heart bleeds, I can't think, my mind screams, my soul needs you. My soul needs you. My soul needs you. My soul needs you. You caught my eye, got crucified. You lived a lie, satisfied. Never were you and I's hard to say goodbye and leave. 7 years, what we achieved. The only time I stopped loving you is never. My heart bleeds, I can't think, my mind screams, my soul needs you. My soul needs you.